For some time now, I've been trying so hard to get rid of some mites in my African nightcrawler worm bins. I'd gone through starving the bins, I've gone through drying the bins, I've gone through the use of diatomaceous earth, I've gone through the use of lime to adjust the pH level in the bins. I even tried baiting. I was using fruits, I was using bread, as you can see here, and the most recent baiting attempt was with this bread. It was milk-soaked bread, and these were the last time I applied baits. And I finally transitioned away from the baiting approach now, which was the number 6th, 7th attempt, I believe. So I'm in the middle now of trying to apply the most recent countermeasure. It's this neem oil. And the neem oil was applied to both affected African nightcrawler systems that you see here on the bench. I soaked the top layer. I sprayed it down with water to maybe help that stuff seep down a little bit into the systems. And I wasn't even sure what to expect, so I didn't know if it was like an instant sort of reaction that you suddenly see no more living mites, or is it a thing that takes time? Well, I learned that it's something I gotta be patient for. I'm gonna have to wait, because I mean right here along the edge of the container even you could see mites walking up and down like a little boardwalk. So I'm going back into these systems again. I'm going to be adding another application of the neem oil spray. And another thing that I'm going to be now doing to try to restore things to normal in these systems, as you've seen, there's plastic that's been put back on to allow for the recirculation of moisture. So we've got dampness once again all over the top surface. And today they're getting food again after a huge span of time. I know it's been about 2.5 weeks over here since we put some grapes in there, but with this bin, it's been something like a 1.5 months since it was last fed. So I'm finally going to sort of put some trust into the fact that the neem oil is going to work. I'm going to start treating these a little bit more normally, put some food in today, and then definitely spray in some neem oil as a second application. From what I understand, it prevents them from being able to eat and nourish themselves. So eventually they wither away out of malnourishment, or at least something along those lines. And it does take time. So here we go, continuing on with the attempts at reducing the mites in my systems. We're continuing to keep our fingers crossed. Now let's get going. So it's like a little racetrack with some of them racing in that direction and some of them racing the opposite direction. So it's just, you know, it's not commonplace to see so many little critters other than my worms in my worm bins. I really have pretty much had it with them. So let's see, what else do we have going on here? I always question what the little tiny white specks are. Nowadays I just seem to have sort of more of a presumption about them that they're not what I want, but they're mites. But whatever, I'm now just sort of on that pattern of how do you use neem oil? Okay, well, you put it in and you wait a little bit. So that's kind of the mode that I'm in right now. So if I see mites, you know, I'm going to recognize the fact that they've only had a day since they got treated with the neem oil. And then maybe it's just going to take a little time for that stuff to show its effects in terms of reducing overall mite numbers. But, you know, I got to be fair. I should really be fair because, you know, all of the efforts that have been undertaken till now have by far reduced the number of mites in here. I guess I was just kind of really pushing for that sort of complete no mite situation at this point since we've come so far. And I think my other reason for gaining such an interest in it is that because even though the original offending mites, the white ones, do seem to have dropped in great numbers in most places, it seems like a whole bunch of other types of mites have really started making themselves at home. So I just figured maybe some sort of a one-size-fits-all anti-mite approach would be the best bet. So yeah, this is the younger of the two systems, the one that's received no food for 40 some odd days at this point. Wow. So the worms in here are going to be very happy about getting some fresh food, that's for sure. I don't know, I just figured I'd try to collect up some of this pretty well broken down type stuff that's fairly dry and fairly large, so that it can be positioned near the food items that we're applying today. The food that I'm bringing into the mix today is a lot of leafy stuff that should go pretty quick, as well as good fleshy cucumber there as well. You know, banana peels will usually take a little bit longer. I bet the berries will go pretty quick too, since they're mainly moisture. So there's various odds and ends in here. It would be nice to harvest the castings in this bin at some point. And I like the suggestion that one person made, which was to, you know, not really try to wait it all out until every little scrap in your system's been broken down. You know, take what you can when you can while it's still relatively fresh, and don't let it sort of over process. I've heard that before, but it was just reiterated earlier in a comment, I believe yesterday or today. And it's so true. I've often fallen prey to that thinking, you know, let's just keep going with it. Let's let them work it down just a little bit more. So the feeding will be positioned down the center, and that's where we can place some of this stuff, the collected junk, and then maybe we should place the food itself down low and place the dry stuff that we want hydrated on top of it. So down here low, if you really go to the very, very bottom, which is where I guess the remaining bits of moisture that are left in the system are kind of available still, that's where the worms are. They're probably hard-pressed to find really nice, comfortable conditions because of the dryness in here. So I am putting in a couple pieces of paper to go along with the food, a little bit of bonus bedding, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. But I don't want it to go in here absorbing a bunch of moisture. So I think I'm going to grab my spray bottle and dampen that stuff down. This is not just a feeding, but it's also a step in the direction of rehydrating the bin. So all the food that I'm giving is frozen. As it thaws, it's going to kick off a bunch of moisture. Here we go. Spread it out kind of evenly. I guess that equates to about 2 handfuls there, I believe. Let's take a little bit extra more for these guys, since the other bin did receive those grapes not too long ago. And I did see some leftovers of those grapes in there too. So there's still little snacks left in there. It's this bin that really has virtually no remaining food left at this point. So I'm going all out. I'm taking out all the stops. I'm giving them grit with this feeding, which they'll probably like too, and the customary coffee. Let the little guys in this system start feeling like, you know, things are getting back to normal finally. Hopefully. So now the application of the neem oil, well, let's throw this in here too. I'd like for that to sort of be mixed with a little bit of agitation, a little bit of blending or something if possible, because I did sort of just top coat the material when I applied it, so only the top surface received any. So I'm not going to go overboard. Okay, it doesn't like squirting when it's tipped over like that, so I'm going to take the stuff that I just dampened a little bit and start pushing it inwards until it gets submerged a little bit. That'll give us a little bit more dry that we can expose to this stuff. Maybe come at it from the sides here too. Okay, and then maybe we start spreading the dry over here out a little bit too. We get a little bit in there, and I think that'll give us actually a pretty good thorough application of this stuff. At this point you could probably say that it is pretty much throughout the entirety of the material. Maybe here's a good chance to also include a little extra water too. Can you tell I'm winging it? That's something you don't see me doing every day. It's very rare that I apply water, but in this situation, you can certainly appreciate why I'm doing it. Now, let's see. One thing I always like to do is have some sort of a piece of paper on top that the worms can hang out on. Take advantage of some of the recirculating moisture under the plastic. So why don't we give them the customary coffee filter, landing pad for the moisture. I'm going to use that as sort of a bonus supplement to this stuff, because this stuff is so tattered. I don't know if it's really covering the whole surface anymore. So we'll spread it out again, use what we can, if it doesn't just fall apart in our hands. Then we'll have pretty decent coverage across the whole top surface. This is a pretty good sized piece here still. Doesn't leave us with much over here though. Well, we've done a pretty good job covering the majority of it. Every place where there's coverage by the plastic, you're going to have this nice recirculation of the moisture that's down within the bin. And I guess the better we cover, the better we preserve that moisture that we just added. So now, the other nice thing is that the neem oil is all over the sides of the container too. As I sprayed it, I was kind of deliberately letting it go off to the sides too, because, you know, I like to shut down the boardwalk, the racetrack, running around this system. Get the bugs to be gone already. So we're going to do a similar thing in the other system, so let's get that out here. So now here, this is the older of the two systems. It's in here where we already had gotten a jump start on feeding. We had put grapes in here, and the recirculation of moisture had already started right after that feeding too, with the inclusion of this plastic again. So while the plastic was only restored to the other bin that we just fed a moment ago, a day or two ago, just very recently, where it's been allowed time to dry and continue being drier and drier every day, this system has actually been recirculating. This system got extremely dry too, just like the other system had gotten. And we decided in here that it was, you know, time to really allow some of the moisture that's still in there to be preserved rather than allowing it all to evaporate away, because it really was, like I said, becoming a seriously overly dry environment in here. So these pieces of paper have been getting paper soaked in the resulting traffic for a while now. Although, you know, you only see a few worms hanging out on top. I bet you if there was more moisture in the bin and more moisture circulating, causing more pooling up here on the top, then we'd probably find many more worms up here. Still, they're coming for it. Some of them are realizing where the moisture is at. So, a little bit better conditions in here as far as moisture is concerned. And clearly mites. But you know what? I'm going to put faith in what we're doing. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it be from the perspective of trying to work with the mites or deal with the mites. I'm going to trust that the neem oil that we've placed in here will do what it's intended to do, and that it'll take a little time. Wow, the stuff down at the very bottom is fairly dry. Or it seems that way, very crumbly. I just felt like I wanted to agitate it up a little bit and get it out here into play instead of leaving it kind of caked in on the bottom there. So here and there, I'm also, you know, we're not seeing many of the grapes, but here's one. Here's another one. So they've been mixed in a little bit. They were actually put into 2 rows flanking the center, which is where I normally feed. So we'll get this food in. How did we do this before? We actually just laid in the bedding for them on the bottom. These are night crawlers. They should appreciate the bedding. Some people will tell you that night crawlers will prefer bedding over, you know, the nitrogen-rich kitchen scraps and veggie scraps and fruits and stuff that you normally give your worm bins. So I have to remind myself that if it's night crawlers, I've got to be a little bit more generous with the carbon-rich materials. Sometimes I'm a little bit skimpy when it comes to that. So let's just pour in the rest. Ooh, we get the most of the berries. I guess I had put the berries into the bottom of the container, so these guys get a little bit more. No biggie. I don't think they're too picky. Yeah, all this stuff, as you can see, is going to kick off a good amount of moisture as it thaws out, as it begins getting broken down by the worms. All right, what did we, what else do we have for them? Here we go. A little bit of grit for them too. Okay. And we'll give them what remains of this coffee too. And here, I think the moisture level has stabilized over the past couple weeks since those grapes were added in here in those 2 rows. So here I'm not so worried about applying the water. I still want to get the neem oil sprayed in here though, in a fairly, consistent way. So I think the middle section is mainly food once you reach the surface. So the material we just used to cover up with, we'll give that stuff a spray like we just did. And we'll kind of do that same sort of tilling over approach. Give it a little bit from here, a little bit from there. And I'm assuming that the food that we're putting in now is also bringing with it a little bit of moisture. So I don't feel that, other than what the neem oil is adding as well as what the feeding is adding, I don't think it's going to be necessary to spray any water into this system. It is a little bit crumbly, a little bit dry. I'll admit that. But I also don't want to go to the other extreme and, get the whole system so damp that it becomes muddy and turns into yet a different problem. Here I think we're going to be good. As those food scraps start to break down, they're going to emit their moisture into the system. The plastic will keep it within the Vermibag tote, and things will become really cozy in here. Alright, so here I don't think we need to add any supplemental bedding. Paper covers. I think these paper covers are still holding up pretty good. Give us almost complete coverage from what I remember. I guess it's just this one that's a little bit more tattered, broken into 2. Alright, well, I've kind of gotten into this whole mite business. It was really interesting to just, kind of methodically try to go through all the different possible things that people say should do the trick. Basically to not have a whole lot of luck with any of them. What does that tell you about me as a vermicomposter? Not much, right? So I keep, like I say over and over, I keep my fingers crossed. Hopefully what we've done here will produce the desired results, and as everyone knows, the desired results is to pretty much be done with the mites. As much fun as it's been, I do have to admit that I look forward to the day we no longer need to work on this problem any longer. So let's continue to keep our fingers crossed, and we'll see where it all leads. Alright everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. Also consider subscribing to the channel too if you haven't done so already. That's really appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Okay. I hear you. What's fair is fair, right? If the younger bin got one, the older bin should get a feeding zone indicator too. Always the afterthought that gets missed, so today I thought I'd include it. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day. Bye now.